You know,
I know,
you know,
but
helps with
my
car
husband
or
comes
helps
from those very independent people who, oh well, that was
Well,
my
I
job.
think-
I
Yeah,
had
but
to
they're-
do it.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
it was my dad's union doing it for all of them, you see,
Yeah.
so they all got it. It was one big mass thing.
Yeah.
But,
You can't alter the
there
way
must be
people are
some
made,
other
can you?
things you can remember.
There was 3,000 people worked there when I worked there.
We're going to get back to Aylsham, because there must be some other things you remember about Aylsham during the war.
Well, I was away then.
Yeah.
The war was over. See, I didn't come out till 47. I mean, the war had been over a couple of years then. Aylsham had altered altogether.
Yes. Yeah.
You came back and met me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. 1952, yeah.
Was that when you were Miss Aylsham?
I was Miss Aylsham in, that was the Festival of Britain year, 1951.
I was playing football on Brickland Park when I met you, wasn't
Yeah, I went down to speak to my uncle with a message from Mum and Dad, and he was playing football and came over, and that was, the rest is history. That was 1949.
Because the Air Force were at Brickland, weren't they, during the war?
We married in
Yeah.
52.
Because your sister was about my age.
She was in the Pops concert party.
Yeah.
Can you remember Standy Bell in the Pops concert party, Betty Scores?
And actually,
She was a land girl.
she was rather nice, you know. I used to like looking at your sister.
I have heard that, John. I have heard that.
I never went out with her. I was so blooming shy in those
She was.
days. I
Although I
was
said
shy.
myself, she was an extremely good-looking girl.
Oh,
Wasn't
if I had my time over again.
Yeah.
What were you saying about Blickling in the war?
Oh, they had the Air Force at Blickling, yeah. Yeah, and the WAFs on the park in Nissen Huts, yeah. Well, you can say about Jack Ross and Phillips, couldn't you? They were stationed at Alton then, weren't they?
she? You're there, darling.
Yeah, the Air Force at Alton, really, when they was the officers and that were in Blickling Hall at that time, weren't they? And the WAFs were in Nissen Huts on Blickling Park. Mind you, so was some of the Air Force, weren't they? Yeah. And Alton.
Yeah. What were British restaurants? Did you go to the British restaurant? What was
Oh
that?
yeah, that was at the chapel one at the top of
Mill Road.
Pound. Is it Pound? Oh, Mill Road. Yeah. They was, I can't remember what I had for main course. I went with my brother. I remember, and I know we had semolina and jam. Yes.
1 and 6.
1 and 6. I don't know. I can't remember that, John. I didn't have too much of it. No, I didn't.
Wonderful place.
But yeah, there used to be several people go there. Yeah, I can't remember when it finished. Can you?
Do you went to British restaurant?
No, I can't.
School.
Somebody said school dinners.
The idea was to eke out your rations.
Yeah.
My parents used to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Our rations weren't very much. I have got a list at home exactly what the rations were.
I suppose you got more with your cameos and what you had then.
So you'd finished school. So you were working. What job were you doing before you went off?
Oh, I worked at the Manor Poultry Farm. Yeah, it was a
Right, so that's what you said
accredited poultry breeding station. Yeah, and they had the camp on one of their fields. The Essex Regiment had their camp on one of the fields there, and the officers were in the house.
Yeah. Now, what was? Did you have to meet sort of certain targets and so on at the farm?
Oh no. We used to have a big old bin and take across the camp to get all the waste food to boil up for the chickens, and we had a few pigs there, not many, but that was a accredited poultry breeding station at that time.
What do you mean by it was credited?
Well, I suppose that was some government thing, I should imagine. I can't really say about that. But they used to, all the eggs and that used to have to go away, and that's special, like they had special cockerels amongst the hens and whatever, you know. That was a really, I should imagine that was a government thing. I didn't really know a lot about it. But we used to boil this waste food up for the pigs and chickens and all, come from the camp. I lived well them times. I got to know the butcher fairly well.
Did the was the farm privately owned?
Oh yes,
Who
Colonel Bowman owned that. Yes.
So
Yeah.
he owned the farm. How many people did he employ there?
There was 5 of us at that time, but then they left. 2 of them got called up, but I was there for a little while. But we had an older man work with me, and then we had two people I didn't really know, so I got called up before I really got to know them, like, you know. But they had 4 maids in the house at that time, which people did, didn't they? A cook and 3 other people.
The vicar's daughter?
Pardon?
Didn't the vicar's daughter work with you?
Oh, Mary, yeah. Mary
Martin.
Martins, yeah, she worked there for a time. And Mrs. Mangy, Dr. Mangy's wife, worked there a little while. Yeah. Amongst the poultry they were. Yeah, they weren't in the house, they worked for amongst the poultry. Yeah.
But the main job was the provision of eggs. It wasn't the
Eggs and poultry, cleaning and that, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we used to cut all the... Because they had... Each chicken house had about 3 long, big runs. So we used to have to cut the grass, and we had 2 or 3 bullocks at that time, and used to feed the grass and that to them, you see, you know. Hay, keep the hay, and which is now where they're now pulling down those places, or a lot of them are pulled down. We used to store things in it because the other side of the road, they all belonged to the manor at that time. Yeah, I was surprised they were allowed to pull them down, to be honest. Yeah, but
so did you have to kill the chickens and pluck the chickens and so on, or was
I used to pluck chickens for in the house,
yeah.
for the house. Yeah, oh yeah, but when they'd finished laying and when they used to go away in lorries, like, you know, or whatever. Yeah, we had thousands.
Did you used to sell baby chicks, day-olds?
Oh, they used to hatch. Yeah, they had a hatchery. Yeah, yeah. Fred Johnson used to look after them at that time, you see. But because then he was a conscientious objector, wasn't he, John?
Was he?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. But then he left before I did. He left the manor before I did. His father, Stanley, used to work in the garden. He was a gardener there at that time. Yeah. But, yeah.
Because my memory isn't.
You say when?
Yeah, whenever you like.
Whenever you like, right. I'll do my best. Well, the first thing what was that?
Doesn't matter.
Oh, the first the first thing about regarding the war was we knew it was imminent or something was going to happen, and we had a scouts camp, and the camp we normally used to happen at Blickling on our farm there. But for some reason or other, I think it was because we were collecting paper and all sorts of things for the effort, we had a small camp on the meadow in Peterson's Lane. The field belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Gold, and that's just about where John Coxford's house is now there. Well, we were on there when it came over that morning that we were at war, or, you know, Chamberlain, he said that we were at war then with Germany. And dear Mrs. Gold came running out and she said, right, come on you boys, clear up, do this, do that, and before long we were all going our different ways home. And that was what I well remember, because then we were busy with we were in the Scouts. I was also in the Army Cadets, and the coordinator for a lot of this was Mr. Walker, D.L. Walker. He was the one who started to get organised and things, and doing things to help and do various things, fundraising and for troops, knitting I think they were doing. But us Scouts now were given the job of, we were collecting iron, all sorts of things, brass, anything that could go. They even got rather energetic and were taking people's front gates off. I got mostly involved with it because I had a pony and cart. We had the farm across and we had no car in them days, but I had a flat bottom cart and a tub cart we called it. So because I was always the transport. And we got in quite a bit of bother once or twice for taking iron when we went collecting. We were, we were a bit overzealous, I think you'd call it. But so it went on, and the scout hut in Rawlingson's Lane was the collecting point. And we used to put everything in there, newspapers and, well, everything would go. And of course, there was a lovely billiard table in there. You might well remember, those people remember it. We were really in trouble because we packed it all full of cardboard, and some of the cardboard and that come from Bramblebond's fish shop and fish shops, and after a little while that didn't go down too well with the green bays. But, we had a smile, but then of course the smell, because the girls in the school used to use the main part of the scout hut for cooking, and they used to have their cooker lessons there. Well, that was quite an effort, but the main thing was with the collecting of things was the shopkeepers were so willing and good about it, and to picture it all again now. I don't know how you'd get on with it all. That people would come out, no, don't go yet. There's something else you can have, something else you can have, and I often wonder now how we cope with school when we were so keen on doing all this collecting material up, which we were asked to do.
What did you think was happening to all this material?
Well, we were told it was going to help to the war effort, and that'd be making guns to fight Hitler and various things like that. Anything the iron especially was the thing which was the most important thing of all. And but then of course the other side of the coin was there used to be some allotments on the Cromer Road near the old railway bridge when that was there. Well, I believe it's still there, the railway bridge is still there on the Cromer Road. Yeah. Well, on the right-hand side of that was a load of allotments. And there was only about 3 being used, and we used to go past this on our way home to Blickling, to Ingworth Road and Blickling. And I happened to say to, it was John Pumphrey at the time, he was the clerk for Mr. Walker, could we have 1 or 2 of those allotments at a cheap rate to dig for victory? And I said, I can bring the gear up from the farm, and we can do all sorts of things with them allotments. And that's what we did, and Mr. Walker allowed us to have them rent-free, and we done quite well, I think, for food and a lot of it, because you used to go to St. Michael's Hospital to help them up there. But the cadets, of course, was the highlight of getting into what we had done as youngsters. We were under Dick Joyce, who became the famous television presenter. He was the lieutenant in charge of the Army Cadet Force, and the Canon Marsham, he was the chaplain to it all. And somewhere, I have one somewhere, but we have a photograph of 180 of us on the vicarage lawns at Hevingham, and I at the moment can't find it, but I'd love to find it. And that gave me good stead to go into the forces, because I was a corporal in that, and I was rather getting a bit fed up. My brother had gone into the Air Force, and I didn't make the grade to get into Air Force with him. My schooling spent too much time collecting scrap, I think. And then I managed to get into the army, and I had the choice. I could either go in the glider regiment or the parachute regiment. I went in the parachute regiment. But the cadet force gave me a good standing to go in, and I went in before I should have done, but they didn't pick that up until much later. But I done a little extra, I think I am.
So how old actually were you at the beginning of the war?
At the beginning of the war,
Yeah.
well, 26, I was only 26, I was
So you'd been 13.
13 when I went.
Yeah.
And I went into the army at just 16 and a bit.
And what should you have been?
17. Well, 17 and a quarter for the call up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as I say, in those days, if you were seen and you weren't being, if they thought you were old enough to be, why the hell aren't you in the army? So-and-so's in the army, you're all right. And of course, being farmers, they used to have a nice little thing to say, well, just because your father's a farmer business, you know. But that wasn't the case. I mean, Alfred, he volunteered as well as I did. He went with Eddie Laxton and several of the boys went.
Could you just do that bit again? Can you start from where you said he went with Eddie Laxton? Because when you did your zip there, it actually picked up on the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
There was Eddie Laxton, you see, he was, well, I imagine he was very good. He bailed out, actually. I mean, he's one of the, I think I'm right saying it, he bailed out and survived, which is a lot different to just jumping out of a plane into a parachute. But he bailed out, and I think I'm pretty sure that he did. And because he's out, Freddie Gotterson, he was another one. Don Heaton, who used to be the woodwork master, and you know, they had all gone, and because everybody, we were itching to go, because the thing was, the way Jerry come through the Europe, whoever thought we'd be able to stop him? I mean, when you thought I got to within, 21 miles of the coast, it's ridiculous to think now that he chose to go to Russia and do that instead of coming over the water. Well, we had nothing here to stop him. I mean, we had a few concrete pillboxes again, the different various road junctions, but what would they have been in? Again, a Panzer.
Yeah. Can you remember where the pillboxes were built in Aylsham and when they were built?
Well, yeah, there's one in particular, there's the one down again, there's past the Anchor pub, down Milgate. Built.
Let's just try that again. Can you say there was one pillbox in particular?
There was one pillbox in particular which was built within a shed or a washhouse. Now, bear with me on that. It's built in the end and it's disguised within the building near the old Anchor pub. And old Mark Clark used to keep that.
There was wood.
Just before the bridge.
There was lap wood,
That's right.
shiplap wood,
Yes.
over the frontage. And
Yeah.
the inside was constructed
Yeah,
of sandbags
Yeah.
filled with concrete.
yeah, that's right.
Now, how did you boys find out about these pillboxes?
Well, we found out for most of the pillboxes because my father attempted to, well, I did. I started work as a carpenter, a joiner at Leiden School, with J.W. Palmer. And there was a lot of us chaps, there was Stackwood and Palmer, and that had to be a trade. Farming was very bad, and my father, no way would he think there was going to be any future for Alfred and I. So he went into bricklaying, and he helped build the county cinema and various other places, and Crummer schools. And I went into the carpentry side, and all I was doing was making blackout shutters and shuttering for pillboxes. Well, of course, we'd often get told to push them down places on a handcart. I mean, there was only George Priest had the lorry for Palmer, and the rest used to be pushed about right up Town Lane. And that's used to be a steep little old narrow bit. And old Palmer, old J.W. used to think you were a horse, you could push the old handcart anywhere. You know, that was you boy do this and you. Another one, then of course you've got the one up Coston Road here, wasn't there? There was one in the end of the field at the hospital in the corner there. Yeah. In the corner of the hospital, we called it where the seat used to be when the poor little old kids used to sit there, between that and the Beecher's house. That was another one, but there was several put in, but I think a lot of them were knocked down. I did keep some, but
There's still two in Aylsham.
where's that? Where are they ones?
There's one.
The one, of course,
on
was in the
south-
marketplace.
Yeah, there's one in the marketplace, but there's one still on the Norwich Road, right beside where the bridge was.
Is there?
Yeah, and the other one is just into Buxton Road, about another 50 yards
Down there.
further along,
Yeah.
which I assume was to cover the railway.
The railway, yeah.
And down Buxton Road.
Yeah.
Now, who built the pillboxes?
Well, Stack would have built some, and J.W. Palmer built them, as far as I can remember. I mean,
So it wasn't the soldiers who built them, it was local?
no, that was local builders. But as far as I remember, the ones what we done with, because we were making the shutters up for the vents. That was 18 inches for 12. I don't remember them meters now. And
Can I just come in on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, certainly.
My uncle was general manager for Youngs of Norwich, and he used to come down, pick me up out of school, and take me around the coast to Waven and
Yeah.
along there, because his men were constructing
Big
all
stuff.
the barricades and the big concrete works
Yeah,
there. And he often used to pick me up on a Friday
yeah,
and take me down because that was payday.
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Well, we'll pick that up, we'll come
Yeah.
back to that in a minute.
But the little-
Once we switch
The little jobs now, see, there was a lot went on about the pillbox in Aylsham Marketplace, and I well remember that one being there, and that wasn't built long before Wing Commander Bader, he hit it, and I mean, he used to stay at the Black Boys with Mrs. Gathercole, and one or two of them was Tuck, one or two of them, and of course they all did. They had a good old drink, and that was Scotter Airfield in them days. That wasn't cultural then, was it? And the times he had ran into that, anything but the pillbox especially. And you know, sports car he had, we used to lift him in and out. I mean, there was ARP, old Major Ram and the rest of them. There was always plenty of ARP people about different things, but I often laugh how whatever they do now when them boys used to come out of that pub, and of course they used to go, and a lot of the poor devils never did come back. But they were all helped to get back to the base, you know, because you used to hear the siren going here when that was at Scotter. You could wail and that screaming out, and they just down tools and everything was gone. They're gone, and God's sake, just get the boys in the planes. I mean, they'd had some drink into them, some of them, but they're wonderful lot of boys. Yeah.
Now, what did you mean about Douglas Bader and the pillbox? You were just...
He couldn't ever stop just short. He always had to go and hit it and do something, put a dent in the car. You know, he he was a great fella, but he's very, very. If you start to say too much to him one way and another, he was rather abrupt to what Tuck was, and that he was very short and sharp. He'd be a man you'd have to really get to know, see the other side of him. He's a brave man, but do you remember when they raised money to his legs, when they took his legs away?
Yeah, and they
They
dropped some more
dropped
eggs in
them,
France,
yeah.
didn't they?
They had a fundraiser here. I mean, again, coincidence, isn't it, that all the fundraising we do now, when you have a fundraising for a pair of legs for a fella in a prisoner of war camp, because he tried to escape, you see, and they took his legs away. And that was done here, yeah.
Now, can we just put a little line in there, then I'll edit this round. Can you just say the famous Wing Commander Bader was based here, or something like that? Just say something like that.
Of course, one person who was based here was Wing Commander Bader, and he was quite a character in all walks of life. If anything went on here, he was supported, and he was always well known with other Canadian NCO officers from the base, which was Scotto at the time, before it became cultural.
That's absolutely super, because I can work that in.
And of course then there was Alton, you see, there was the Alton airfield, which had, what they got a satellite, called it the satellite airfield of Scotto, and anything would come down there, perhaps couldn't get down at Norwich, St Faith's, Rackheath, they were spilling out to land wherever they could, wasn't it? Langham was another one, Swann and Morley, Matlask, yeah. There was airfields all around us, and of course, well, as maps have the news, you had to get around in a bit, it did.
Did you ever follow them? Did you
Pardon?
ever follow the aeroplanes that came down?
If they crashed and that, because we went the ambulance and that, to see. But I think Alan is doing some of that, isn't he, where they went down. The only memorable one I had from the ambulance my do was when we went to Norwich.
But hang on, let's
Sorry about that. I was trying to be so
start
quiet.
that beginning. So you were on the ambulance as a messenger?
As a messenger boy, yeah,
Yeah,
and
let's just
attendant, come anything, you know.
Well, let's start that bit again. You say that you were on the ambulance as a messenger, and then
Yeah.
you go back to that one where you were about to say about some particular incident.
During my time with the civil defence, I was an attendant, a messenger with the ambulance, and of course, bearing in mind these are the trailer ambulances we called. They were like a horse box with 6 stretchers in them, opposed to dear old Curtis's ambulance, what held 2 and coach-built body, wasn't it? These were trailers, well, they are like what you sell now for sheep. And there were 6 stretchers, and we got a call to Norwich, and we finished up at the bottom of St Stephen's there, and it was the landlord, landlady, and people from the Bull Public House, and they'd had a direct hit. And if that don't straighten somebody up when they see that lot, that's pretty awful to see that. But that's what these people nowadays, of course, wouldn't face all the time. But that was a bit of a shock to really let you know what it was all about. And of course, St Stephen's in them days was a narrow little street, and there was hose pipes and everywhere. Everywhere you looked was hose pipes and firemen running about. It was a bit chaotic, but howsoever, we enjoyed it, a lot of it.
Did the Aylsham teams get called into Norwich very much?
Not a lot. I think the main rule of the Aylsham ones was the localised ones and looking to the coast.
Yeah, just
Sorry.
That's all right.
And looking to the coast and aircraft.
Let's start that at the beginning. We didn't go to Norwich very much.
No, we didn't go to Norwich much, no. And actually, with that case, the North Walsham ambulance crew was there in that part of the city as well. Because bear in mind, when you get to the Blitz was on, you get the outskirts of the city, and they could tell you where you have to go. Well, you know as well as I do now. If you don't know the city well, you're lost in about 5 minutes. Well, you get a blitz going on and air raid wardens calling out, you can't go up that road, there's a hole in the road and you can't go there. Somehow they just make you wonder how you were able to get to the place you wanted. I mean, a lot of people didn't know the city at all really well, but there was always obstructions everywhere, and it would make you wonder now how it did all work out. But I know we were up there, we met with the North Walsham ambulance people and that, doing the very same thing. And to do that with a box trailer behind you with injured people or dead people in, that was a little bit horrific. But you didn't feel it then, but it was when you went home, when you got home, and you'd been round to the old Norfolk and Norwich mortuary and done your bit, and you get stood down and you go home, and you think you've been through a bit of a nightmare.
How old were you?
Hmm?
Tell me.
How old?
You'd been 14,
Well, about 14, 15 years old, and I was only one of many. I mean, our mothers and fathers, be honest, knew we went to do a duty, but they had no idea that we were doing such things as we were doing, but we were just having a go. That was as simple as that, really. I mean, there were some hair-raising stories when they were told where we got to, and they said, oh, they've gone up to the Blitz, or they've gone out to a plane crash somewhere. I mean, whatever our mothers went through, we had no idea. We didn't consider what they were going through. That was excitement as much as anything to be doing something.
Can we get back to Aylsham now and your evacuees?
The evacuees?
Yeah, do you tell them now about
Well, one of the duties we got, this was beside collecting the scrap iron and that, when we were notified, I forget who was the bulletin officer, they would call them. They wanted help in taking the evacuees to various addresses in the town. And we were all asked to assemble outside the town hall, and all the various organisations had it. And we waited and we waited, and no, they weren't turning up, The next thing we knew was we were told that they'd gone to North Walsham instead. So anyhow, after a little while, they said that they rectified it, and they did arrive in Aylsham. And So I went on, there was ladies, yes, so many, certain person will take 3, 2, 1. Yes, Johnny Brown, Billy Hill, this and that. Yes, everything was going well. And the parents who'd come down with the children, they'd left the kids with the 1 or 2 of the helpers and the teachers, and they'd gone off into the pubs and having a damn good time. They didn't mind, the kids were there, and end of lot of worry for them. And at the end of it all, there was 3 little old kiddies who looked as disrevelled as ever you see them, and nobody had, there was no vacancies, nobody had put forward that they wanted. There were 3 left over. So I don't know, it's Mrs. Rivet or Mrs. Tilson who said, well, what do we do now? And I said, I'll take them home with me, we got plenty of room at home. And I took them home, and no more to do, mother, you know, like she would, yeah, that's all right. And they stayed with us till the very end, all the while. The crown of all, at the end of that, the teachers were looking for billets. And I said, well, there was a nice lady there, Miss Warren. I don't know where she got to, and when we found out she hadn't got anywhere permanent, and I went and she finished up living with us as well, and she had the room, what was my mother's favourite sitting room. She had it all the while, and she was followed by Miss or Mrs. West, but she was a different. But Miss Warren, she was one of the loveliest people out. Yep.
Be quiet.
Oh,
now.
right.
Yeah, yeah. If you say a little bit about what you remember at the start of the war, then what you were doing, and
How old you were.
at school then, and yeah, you far away.
Well, when the war started, I was only 8 years old. But I think my first memories of just pre-war was having the gas masks fitted at the recreation ground when all the families met there and everyone was given a gas mask, and it was sized up for you with pins put in to keep it in the right place. And we all went home with these little square boxes with a piece of string tied on. I suppose the first actual day I remember was the day war broke out. Previous day I'd just come from London, and a lot of children were on the trains coming from London. And the next day being Sunday, September the 3rd, I went down to the station, the old LNER, and a lot of children and teachers were detraining, or whatever you call it, and they were then posted to the various houses in and around Aylsham. I suppose, whether you call it fortunate or not, my mother had a very bad heart, and the doctor said no way could she look after anybody, so it was just me, but we only had a 2-bedroom cottage, so that's what I remember about that. Aylsham School, the children which came first were all grammar school children, and Aylsham not having a grammar school, the children then had to move over to North Walsham, and the ones from North Walsham came here, and they were from Edmonton, and a lot of them had never seen, well, they didn't know what a cow was, and they certainly didn't know where milk came from, did they? The soldiers were also billeted around town, and I noticed on this picture Mr. Herbert Jex, who lived opposite us, and they had 2 soldiers billeted with them. I remember one was a boxer, and he gave me a pair of boxing gloves, and Mr. Jex and his wife were Salvation Army people, and strictly non-alcoholic. So the 2 soldiers used to creep out of the bedroom window at night time, and to go down to the Swann and get tanked up. What happened when they got home, because I mean they used to make a lot of noise when they came home, so the Jexers must have been awakened. Aylsham School wasn't big enough for all the children which came here. So we were divided up. The locals had the school half the day, and the evacuees had it the other half. At the time I was in Mrs. Spaulding's class, and she was a good old sort, and she used to take us on walks in the country, round Abel Heath. Days she would take us on the rec, and we'd play football and cricket and rounders, and we had quite a bit of fun. I think in a way, we tended to enjoy the war. It was certainly different to what we'd been used to. The day the German plane came over and machine gunned the town, I was at school. I believe it was a lunchtime, because we'd come out and we were then going to go into the school lane. Part of the wall had been knocked down, because prior to that the school was strictly divided between boys and girls, and part of the wall had been knocked down so that there could be access if necessary. And Mrs. Spaulding shouted, "Quick, get down! German plane!" And you could hear the rat-tat-tat-tat as the machine guns were going off. One young lad was walking in the market, and he was hit, and he at the time had been working for Henry Page, and Mr. Jex, who's on this photograph here, he was the one who noticed the blood running down his leg and got him to the doctors. They built in odd places around the town where perhaps some people didn't have air raid shelters. They built some blast shelters, I think they were called, out of concrete. And there was one right next to where I lived in 100 Hungerford Street, on the corner of the farmland there. And I remember having to go in there one night because the plane had come over and dropped 2 parachute mines. And you were talking about Mr. Tilson, Joe. Yeah. The civil defence went there, and Mr. Tilson, I think, acquired the silk out of the parachute. Yeah, yeah. And one dropped one side of the Aylsham boundary, yeah, and one went into the Marsham side. Somebody must be getting married. Old Clem Howes, who lived up in, I think they called it Hollybush House, at the top of Spar Lane, that took all his windows and doors out.
Now, why would Mr. Tilson want the parachute?
Well, because every piece of clothing was on rations, and you had, did they call them coupons or units? Or, and that was pure silk. And I mean, you could make all sorts with pure silk. I mean, the ladies couldn't get underclothes very much or anything, so I mean, that was worth saving.
And was Mr. Tilson, did he run a shop or?
Mr. Tilson was manager at Henry Page's. Henry Page's. Aylsham Supply Stores, yeah, which at the time took all the south side of the marketplace up. Barclays Bank right round the corner. Yeah, from Barclays Bank right round into Hungerford Street. And also they hired the cellars under the town hall, all bar one, which, as Joe has stated, was the Civil Defence headquarters. The territorial soldiers, I remember them being mobilised. My uncle, Clifford Cook, he was a territorial, and I went with him and carried his rifle to the drill hall and saw all the chaps go away. Our scout or cub leader, I was in the cubs then, the cub leader, Ray Fairclough, who I think at the time was a reefing man but then came to live in Aylsham. He was called up. He was captured at Singapore and had quite a rough time. And after that he would never buy anything Japanese. He was on the railway of death. Mr. Barber, I had just gone up into Mr. Barber's class. I think I was there about a fortnight when he was called up and went to war. On the there was a drill hall built in Aylsham. I don't know whether that was at the beginning of the war, just before the war, opposite the cinema, and that was used by a regiment who had Bren gun carriers. We used to call it the soldiers' field, the field beside it. And on Saturday mornings, several of us young boys who lived round and about, we'd go and help them to wash down the Bren gun carriers. And as a treat, we were allowed to ride in them round and round the fields before they were all parked up near the drill hall. There was a camp, army camp, situated down on the Norwich Road, right beside the railway station, and all wooden buildings there for the soldiers to be in. Tank traps were placed around the entrance to a lot of the roads in Aylsham, and you can still see on a frosty morning where the tank traps were situated. They consisted of railway track bent in the form of a hairpin, and holes were dug and concreted out and then just covered over, and then if there had been a warning of an attack, then the tops had been taken off, these hairpins would have been dropped in place and covered by rolls of barbed wire, which all was laid beside the road with these steel hairpins. There was one in particular near where I lived, at near the railway bridge in Hungerford Street. Slit trenches were dug either side of the bank so that they could cover the road both north and south. I know one was dug through my father's ground so that they had one part of the trench on the railway bank and one in Hungerford Street, and that was just a slit trench where they had sandbags over. These were often manned by either the regular force, which was based, I suppose, the ones down at on the Norwich Road, or the Home Guard servicemen, LDV as they were called, Local Defence Volunteers, at the beginning part of the war. I was in the St John's Ambulance Cadets, and we used to meet in the air raid shelter underneath the town hall, which George just been talking about. And on manoeuvres one Sunday morning, one of our members, who was also a member of Civil Defence boys, George Spelling, was accidentally shot in the face. Although there weren't a bullet end in the gun, the blast disfigured poor George, and he had a blue sheen and spots on his face right till the time he died, still as a very young man. One Sunday morning, my father called me to look out of the window, and American plane, a B-17, was on fire, and we could see it coming over, and it went in a southwest to northwest direction over our houses, and we could see the airmen jumping out, and the plane crashed at Borough, and like all curious young boys, we jumped on our cycles and we went to see where that had crashed. So that was out of the boundary of Aylsham, and that crashed, killing 2 members of the crew. The others survived and were taken away by the RAF. The Searchlight Battery was situated at the further end of Spar Lane, not far from where the parachute bomb went off. As we were talking about earlier, the pillboxes, one in the marketplace, one on the Buxton Road and one on the Norwich Road. Where do we go from here?
Now, you were talking about you going out with work to do defence building. Can you say a little bit about that? And
Yeah, sure. My uncle, Albert Swann, was general manager for Johnny Young's, the builders, big builders in Norwich. And often on a Friday morning he would come down to St Michael's School and ask Mrs Spalding if I could have part of the day off. And this they allowed for some reason. And I used to go with him around Trimmingham, Waben and along the North Norfolk coast, because the big builders were used in the construction of the big defences along the coast. And Friday being payday, he used to take a big suitcase full of money and pay all the men that were on the jobs. And that was take 2/3 of the day up to go around all these pillboxes and defence works at Waben and along the coast, Blakeney, Cley, and then we'd come home. And I used to have an enjoyable day, but that didn't help the war effort, not on my part anyhow. When we were talking about the pillboxes, I also remember along Hunger Street, not far from where I lived, and whether that was to defend railway bridges, I don't know. And along the Buxton Road, the soldiers had dug out holes in the banks and placed 5-gallon fuel cans full of some type of explosive fuel with charges behind them, and they were there and they were just roughly covered up, and I assumed that somebody would have the job of detonating those, perhaps to stop tanks or something. And I also remember when we were exploring, I suppose that would be perhaps at the end part of the war, we used to go swimming in the river down at Milgate, and we discovered there was a trapdoor under the bridge which was still filled with explosives. So obviously the river bridges would have been blown if there had been an invasion.